Page 23. I am afraid, but more than that, I'm angry at myself. Now I must wait for those people to come and get me at any moment. If there is a delay, it can only mean that they're setting a trap for me. I shall hide this diary, invent some explanation, and wait for them near the boat, ready to fight, to escape. But I'm not so worried about the dangers I'm facing, more concerned about the mistake I made. It can deprive me of the woman forever. After I had bathed and was clean but more unkempt looking than ever, I went down to see her. This was my plan. I would wait for her by the rocks, and when she arrived, I would be watching the sunset. That would change her surprise, her probable suspicion to curiosity. Our common devotion to the setting sun would make a favorable impression on her. She would ask my name, we would become friends. It was very late when I arrived. My lack of punctuality exasperates me. To think that in the civilized world, in Caracas, I was always late deliberately. That was one of my most personal characteristics. I ruined everything. She was watching the sunset, and suddenly I jumped out from behind some boulders with my hairy face, and standing above her, I must have appeared more hideous than I actually am. I imagine they will be coming to get me any moment now. I have not prepared an explanation. I am not afraid. This woman is not just a gypsy. Her aplomb astounded me, for she gave no indication that she had seen me. She did not blink an eye or make the slightest movement of any kind. The sun was still above the horizon, hovering as a kind of mirage. I hurried down the rocks. I saw her, the bright scarf, her hands clasped on one knee, her glance enlarging my little world. My breathing became uncontrollable. The rocks, the sea, everything seemed tremulous. As I watched her, I could hear the ocean with its sounds of movement and fatigue close at hand, as if it had moved to my side. My agitation diminished somewhat, and I began to doubt that she could hear my breathing. Then, while waiting to speak to her, I was reminded of an old psychological law. It was preferable to address her from a high place. That would make her look up to me. The elevation would compensate, at least in part, for my defects. I climbed higher on the rocks. The effort made me feel weak. Other things that made me weak were my haste. I felt obliged to speak to her that very day. If I wanted to keep her from feeling afraid of me, we were in a lonely place and it was growing dark. I could not wait any longer. The sight of her, as if she were posing for an invisible photographer, she surpassed the calm of the sunset, and I did not wish to interrupt that. Speaking to her would be an alarming experience. I did not even know whether I had any voice left. I watched her from my hiding place. I was afraid that she would see me, so I came out, perhaps too abruptly. Even so, her composure was not altered. She ignored me as if I were invisible. I hesitated no longer. Please, young lady, I said, will you please listen to me? But I hoped she would not listen because I was so excited I had forgotten what I was going to say. The words young lady sounded ridiculous on the island, and besides, my sentence was too imperative, combined with my sudden appearance there, the time of day, the solitude. I persisted. I realize you may not wish, but I find it impossible now to recall exactly what I said. I was almost unconscious. I spoke in a slow, subdued voice with a composure that suggested impropriety. I repeated the words, young lady. I stopped talking altogether and began to look at the sunset, hoping that the shared vision of that peaceful scene would bring us together. I spoke again. The effort I was making to control myself pitched my voice even lower and increased the indecency of my tone. After several more minutes of silence, I insisted, I implored, in what I was sure a repulsive manner. And finally I became ridiculous. Trembling, almost shouting, I begged her to insult me, to inform against me even, if only she would break the terrible silence. It was not as if she had not heard me, as if she had not seen me. Rather, it seemed that her ears were not used for hearing, that her eyes could not see. She did insult me, in a sense, by showing that she was not afraid of me. Night had fallen when she picked up her basket and walked slowly up the hill. The men have not come to get me yet. Perhaps they will come tonight. Perhaps the woman is unusual in this respect, too. She may not have told them about seeing me. It is very dark tonight. I know the island well. I'm not afraid of an army if it tries to find me at night. It has been again as if she did not see me. This time I made the mistake of not speaking to her at all. When the woman came down to the rocks, I was watching the sunset. She stood there for a moment without moving, looking for a place to spread out her blanket. Then she walked toward me. If I had put out my hand, I would have touched her. This possibility horrified me, as if I had almost touched a ghost. There was something frightening in her complete detachment. But when she sat down at my side, it seemed she was defying me, trying to show that she no longer ignored my presence. She took a book out of her basket and sat there reading. I tried to control my nerves. Then, as she stopped reading and looked up, I thought, she's going to ask me a question. But the implacable silence continued. I understood the serious implications of not interrupting it, but still, without any obstinacy, for no reason, I remained silent. Her companions have not come to get me. Perhaps she has not told them about me, or they may be worried because I know the island so well. And perhaps they send the woman back each day to make me think she is in love with me, to put me off my guard. I'm suspicious, but I'm sure I can ferret out any scheme, no matter how cunning it might be. I have found that I usually imagine that things are going to turn out badly. This tendency started about 3 or 4 years ago. It is not accidental, but it is annoying. The fact that the woman comes back each day, that she wants me to be near me, all this seems to indicate a change that is too good to be true. Perhaps I can forget my beard, my age, and the police who have pursued me for so long, and who no doubt are still searching for me stubbornly, like an effective curse. But I must not let myself get too optimistic. As I write these lines, I have an idea that gives me hope. I do not believe I have insulted the woman, but still it would not do any harm to apologize to her. What does a man usually do on these occasions? He sends flowers, of course. I have a ridiculous plan, but any gift, no matter how trivial, is touching if it is given in the spirit of humility. There are many flowers on the island. When I arrived, I saw some of them growing near the swimming pool and the museum. I should be able to make a small garden for her down by the rocks, enlisting nature's help to gain her confidence. Perhaps the results of my efforts will put an end to her silence and her reserve. It will be a poetic maneuver. I've never worked with colors. I know nothing about art, but I'm sure I can make a modest effort, which will be pleasing to her. I got up very early this morning. My plan was so good that I felt it surely would not fail. I went to gather flowers, which are most abundant down in the ravines. I picked the ones that were least ugly. Even the palest flowers have an almost animal vitality. When I had picked all I could carry and started to arrange them, I saw that they were dead. I was going to change my plan, but then I remembered that up on the hill, not far from the museum, there is another place where many flowers grow. As it was early in the morning, I felt certain that the people would still be sleeping, so it would be safe to go there. I picked several of these very small and scabrous flowers. It seemed that they did not have that monstrous urge to die. Their disadvantages, they're small, they grow near the museum. Almost all morning I exposed myself to the danger of being seen by anyone brave enough to get up before 10 o'clock. But while I was gathering the flowers, I kept an eye on the museum and did not see any signs of life. This allows me to suppose, to be certain, that I was not observed either. The flowers are very small. I shall have to plant literally thousands of them if I want a garden to be noticed. I spent a long time preparing the soil, breaking the ground. It's hard, I have a large service to cover, and sprinkling it with rain water. When the ground is ready, I shall have to find more flowers. I shall try to keep these people from seeing me, or from seeing my garden before it's finished. I'd almost forgotten that there are cosmic demands on the life of a plant. After all my work, the risk I have taken, the flowers may not even live until sunset. I see that I have no artistic talent, whatever, but I'm sure my garden will be quite touching. Between the clumps of grass and hay, naturally it'll be a fraud. Although it will look like a cultivated garden this afternoon, it will be wilted by tomorrow, or if there's a wind, it may have no flowers at all. It rather embarrasses me to reveal the design of my garden. An immense woman is seated watching the sunset with her hands clasped on one knee. A diminutive man, made of leaves, kneels in the front of the woman. He will be labeled I, and underneath it I shall make this inscription: Sublime, close at hand but mysterious, with the living silence of the rose. My fatigue almost sickens me. I could sleep under the trees until this evening, but I shan't do it. It must be my nerves that make me feel this urge to write. And the reason I'm so nervous is that everything I do now is leading me to one of three possible futures: to the woman, to solitude, or the living death in which I spent the past few years, an impossibility now that I've seen the woman, or to a horrible sentence. Which one will it be? Time alone will tell, but still I know that writing this diary can provide the answer. It may even help produce the right future. When I make this garden, or rather, when I made this garden, I felt like a magician because the finished work had no connection with the precise movements that had produced it. My magic depended on this. I had to concentrate on each part, on the difficult task of planting each flower and aligning it with the preceding one. As I worked, the garden appeared to be either a disorderly conglomeration of flowers or a woman. And yet the finished garden is quite beautiful, but I was not able to create it exactly as I had planned. In imagination, it is no more difficult to make a woman standing than to make one seated with her hands clasped on one knee. But in reality, it is almost impossible to create the latter out of flowers. The woman is shown from the front view with her head in profile, looking at the sunset. A scarf made of violet-colored flowers covers her head. Her skin is not right. I cannot find any flowers of that somber color that repels and attracts me at the same time. Her dress and the ocean are made of blue and of white flowers. The sun is composed of some strange sunflowers that grow on this island. I am shown in profile, kneeling. I am small, a third of the size of the woman, and green, made of leaves. I had to modify the inscription. The first one was too long to make out of flowers. I changed it to this: You have awakened me from a living death on this island. I liked the idea of calling myself a dead man who suffered from insomnia. I liked it so well I almost forgot to be courteous. She might have interpreted the phrase as a reproach, but I believe I was blinded by my wish to appear as an ex-corpse, and I was delighted with the discovery of death. That death was impossible if I could be with the woman. The variations, with all their monotony, were almost monstrous. You have kept a dead man on this island from sleeping. I am no longer dead. I am in love. But I lost my courage. The inscription on the flowers says, the humble tribute of my love. The way things turned out was natural enough, but unexpectedly merciful. I am lost. My little garden was a dreadful mistake. When Ajax, or some other Hellenic name I have forgotten now, slaughtered the animals, he made a mistake of equal magnitude. But in this case, I am the slaughtered animals. This afternoon, the woman came earlier than usual. She left her book and a basket on a rock and spread out her blanket close to the shore. She was wearing a tennis dress and a violet-colored headscarf. She sat there for a moment, watching the sea as if she were only half awake. Then she stood up and went to get her book. She moved with that freedom we have when we are alone. As she passed my little garden, she pretended not to notice it. I did not mind, for the moment she arrived, I realized what an atrocious failure it was. I was miserable because it was too late to do anything about it. When the woman opened her book, put her fingers between the pages, and continued to watch the sunset, I began to feel less nervous. She did not go away until night had fallen. Now, I derive consolation from thinking about her disapproval, and I wonder whether it's justified. What is there to hope for after the stupid mistake I have made? But since I can't still recognize my own limitations, perhaps she'll excuse me. Of course, I was at fault for not having created the garden in the first place. I was going to say that my experiment shows the dangers of creation, the difficulty of balancing more than one consciousness simultaneously. But what good would that do? What solace could I derive from that? Everything is lost now. The woman, my past solitude. Since I cannot escape, I continue with this monologue, which now is unjustifiable. In spite of my nervousness, I felt inspired today when I spent the afternoon sharing the undefiled serenity, the magnificence of the woman. I experienced the same sense of well-being again at night when I dreamed about the bordello of blind women that Oberleri and I visited in Calcutta. In the dream, I saw the woman of the sunsets, and suddenly the bordello changed into an opulent Florentine palace. I was dazzled by it all, and I heard myself exclaim, "How romantic!" as I sobbed with complacent joy. But I slept fitfully, remembering that I did not measure up to the woman's strict demands. I shall never be able to forget it. She controlled her distaste and pretended, kindly, not to see my horrible little garden. I was miserable too, hearing Tea for Two in Valencia, which that blatant phonograph repeated until sunrise. All that I've written about my life, hopefully, are with apprehension, in jest, or seriously, mortifies me. I'm in a bad state of mind. It seems that for a long time I have known that everything I do is wrong, and yet I have kept on the same way, stupidly, obstinately. I might have acted this way in a dream, or if I were insane. When I slept this afternoon, I had this dream like a symbolic premature commentary on my life. As I was playing a game of croquet, I learned that my part in the game was killing a man. Then suddenly I knew I was that man. By the way, that's a reference to a story by Jorge Luis Borges called, I'm forgetting. I'll have to write it in the YouTube notes. Now the nightmare continues. I am a failure. And now I even tell my dreams. I want to wake up, but I'm confronted with the sort of resistance that keeps us from freeing ourselves from our most atrocious dreams. Today, the woman was trying to show me her indifference, and she succeeded. But why is she so cruel? Even though I'm the victim, I can view this situation objectively. She was with the dreadful tennis player. His appearance should discourage any feelings of jealousy. He's very tall and was wearing a wine-colored tennis jacket, which was much too large for him. white slacks and a huge yellow and white shoes. His beard seemed to be false, his skin effeminate, waxy, mottled on his temples. His eyes are dark, his teeth ugly. He speaks slowly, opening his small, round mouth wide, vocalizing in a childish way, revealing a small, round crimson tongue, which is almost close to his lower teeth. His hands are long and pallid. I sense that they are slightly moist. When I saw them approaching, I hid at once. The woman must have seen me. At least, I suppose she did, for not once did she look in my direction.